Introduction. Why mastering public speaking transforms your life. Imagine for a moment that you have the opportunity of a lifetime before you. An interview for the job you've always wanted, a meeting with a client that could change the course of your business, or perhaps an unexpected encounter with a person who can open doors to new horizons. Now think, how would you react if, at that moment, the words didn't flow, if your mind went blank, or worse yet, if you said something that didn't truly reflect what you thought? This is the difference between those who pass up opportunities and those who make the most of them. Mastering public speaking isn't just about speaking well. It's about thinking quickly, articulating ideas clearly, and projecting confidence in every word. Life constantly places us in situations where our communication skills determine the course of our future, and those who master this art not only stand out, but also inspire trust, generate respect, and open doors that remain closed to others. Think about the times you've had a great idea but couldn't express it adequately. Perhaps you had the perfect solution to a problem at work, but nervousness made you hesitate, and your idea got lost amidst other less brilliant but better presented ideas. In contrast, there are people who, even with average ideas, manage to get others to listen and take them seriously, not because their proposal is superior, but because they know how to communicate with clarity, pace, and energy. This happens everywhere. In the office, at university, at family gatherings, in a simple conversation with friends. Knowing how to communicate is not a luxury reserved for politicians or public speakers. It's an essential tool that defines how others perceive you and how far you can go. The powerful thing about effective communication is that it's not a talent reserved for a fortunate few. You don't need to be born with a powerful voice or a naturally charismatic personality to make an impact with your words. The truth is that most great communicators didn't start out with complete confidence. Many were shy, nervous, or even suffered from extreme stage fright. However, they learned techniques, practiced with discipline, and, above all, understood that communication is a skill built with intention. This means you can do it too, no matter your starting point. The science behind learning public speaking shows that with the right exercises, you can train your mind to organize ideas quickly, your voice to project authority, and your body language to convey confidence. Even stage fright, that trembling hand or lump in your throat, can be transformed into positive energy that propels you forward instead of holding you back. A clear example of this can be found in everyday situations. Imagine someone who has to speak in a team meeting. They know what they're talking about, have the necessary information, but begin with filler words, hesitations, and an uncertain tone of voice. The result? Their message loses force, and even if its content is valuable, the general perception is that they lack a grasp of the subject. Now, think of another person who enters that same room, breathes calmly before speaking, mentally organizes their points, and presents them with a firm, measured tone, using simple but consistent gestures. This difference in presence and confidence not only makes others listen, but also makes them remember and trust them. It's the same information, but communicated with clarity and control. This ability to think quickly and speak clearly becomes a competitive advantage in any field. In the workplace, it can mean a promotion to a higher position because you can explain your ideas better than your peers. In business, it can mean closing a multimillion-dollar contract because you emotionally connected with your client. In your personal relationships, it can translate into resolving conflicts maturely, expressing affection genuinely, and establishing deeper bonds. Even in high-pressure situations, such as a last-minute presentation or a difficult conversation, the ability to remain calm and respond intelligently makes the difference between a mediocre result and an outstanding one. A real-life example that illustrates this is that of a young engineer who was invited to present a project to a group of investors. He knew his work was solid, but the challenge was to communicate it in an engaging way. Initially, his plan was to read from his notes, but he decided to take the risk of speaking without relying on them, using only a mental framework. He practiced his breathing, took care of his posture, and focused his message on what the investors really wanted to hear: concrete results and benefits. The result was surprising. Not only did he manage to convey his proposal clearly, but he also received an investment offer higher than he had expected. These kinds of results are not uncommon when you master the skill of communicating confidently and with quick thinking. The key is understanding that every interaction counts. Every interview, every meeting, every presentation, or informal conversation can become a turning point. Often, it's not about knowing more than others, but rather knowing how to better explain what you know. This completely changes how you're perceived. They see you as capable, trustworthy, and prepared. This perception opens doors, provides you with opportunities, and positions you positively in the face of any challenge. Even in your personal life, knowing how to communicate avoids misunderstandings, strengthens relationships, and allows you to express your emotions more authentically. Some people believe that speaking well means impressing with complicated words or long speeches. In reality, speaking well means conveying your message in a simple, clear, and memorable way, adapting to the context and your interlocutor. For example, if you have to explain a technical concept to people who are unfamiliar with the subject, your goal isn't to show off how much you know, but to ensure everyone understands your idea without feeling confused or excluded. This ability to adapt your message to the situation is a sign of communicative intelligence and is highly valued in any environment. Mastering public speaking doesn't mean becoming someone other than who you are, but rather becoming the best version of yourself when communicating. It means ensuring that your voice reflects the clarity of your ideas, that your gestures support your words, and that your presence inspires confidence. It doesn't matter if it's a hallway conversation or a stage with hundreds of people. When you manage to convey your message with confidence and empathy, people listen to you and remember you. And when this becomes a habit, you begin to notice real changes in your life. More job opportunities, stronger relationships, a positive influence on those around you, and, above all, an inner confidence that drives you to continue growing. Ultimately, true transformation occurs when you understand that communication is not just an external tool for achieving goals, but a reflection of your personal growth. When you improve your way of communicating, you also improve the way you think, listen, connect with others, and present yourself to the world. This combination of quick thinking and effective communication makes you someone capable of facing any challenge with serenity and determination, and that, without a doubt, changes the course of your life. But before continuing, please share your audiobook in the comments below, and if this message resonates with you, give it a thumbs up and share it. This way, you'll be sure not to miss any content that nourishes your mind and brings you closer every day to the life you truly deserve. There's no time to waste. Now, let's continue. Chapter number 1. The Power of Effective Communication. The way you speak is much more than the simple act of uttering words. It's how others perceive you, the lens through which they interpret your personality, your level of preparation, and even your degree of confidence. From the moment you open your mouth, people form judgments about you, even if you don't realize it. If your tone is uncertain, your sentences are jumbled, or your message lacks clarity, you may be perceived as someone who isn't in control of their own thinking, even if the content of what you say is valuable. On the contrary, when your voice is projected firmly, your ideas are well organized, and you manage to convey your points without hesitation, you are immediately perceived as competent and trustworthy. This doesn't just happen in formal speeches or presentations before large audiences. It happens all the time, in every everyday interaction. When speaking with a colleague, responding to a job interview, participating in a conversation with friends, or resolving a family misunderstanding. Every word that comes out of your mouth leaves an impression, and that impression can propel you forward or hold you back. A simple example is when two people present the same improvement proposal in a company. The first speaks in a disorganized manner, repeats ideas, constantly uses filler words like or well, and ends up leaving more questions than answers. The second, with the same ideas, but expressed with structure and confidence, manages to get the team to listen attentively and trust her plan. The difference. It wasn't the content itself, but the way it was communicated. The right words with the right tone generate authority and trust, while a lack of clarity causes doubt and detracts from the idea. That's why great leaders, successful entrepreneurs, and influential people invest so much time in improving their communication skills. They know that a clear, well-articulated message can change the way the world perceives them. Mental clarity plays a key role in this entire process. You can't confidently express something if you're not clear in your mind. Insecurity when speaking is often a reflection of disordered thinking. Therefore, one of the first steps to communicating with impact is learning to organize what you think before you say it. This doesn't mean memorizing every word or practicing endless speeches. It means learning to synthesize your main ideas, understanding what you want to achieve with your message, and using a logical order that allows you to move from one point to the next without losing the thread. When your mind is clear, your body language, your tone, and your way of expressing yourself automatically convey confidence. Even if you make a mistake or are asked an unexpected question, your mental clarity allows you to respond naturally instead of blocking yourself. Consider a doctor who must explain a complicated diagnosis to a patient. He or she may use technical terms, full of words, that the patient doesn't understand, and even though his or her knowledge is in-depth, the message doesn't resonate. The patient leaves confused, perhaps worried, or even distrustful. In contrast, another doctor, armed with the same information, chooses simple words, uses a calm tone, and makes sure the patient understands every step of the treatment. Which of the two inspires more trust? Without a doubt, the latter. It's not about who knows more, but rather who can communicate effectively. That difference is based on mental clarity in organizing ideas and confidence in expressing them. However, there's a very common mistake many people make, confusing talking a lot with communicating well. Thinking that filling up the space with words, elaborating on unnecessary explanations, or giving too many details is synonymous with good communication is a myth that ruins many speeches. Talking a lot without a defined purpose can lead to boredom, lose the listener's attention, and even give the impression that you don't have a solid grasp of the subject. Communicating with impact, on the other hand, means conveying a concise, clear, and relevant message. The best presentations or conversations aren't the longest, but rather those that leave a clear message in the listener's mind and motivate them to take action or reflect. A classic example can be seen in the world of sales. Imagine a salesperson who, instead of listening to the customer, talks for 20 minutes straight about a product's features, uses unnecessary technical jargon, and leaves no room for questions. Even if the information is accurate, the customer may feel overwhelmed or disinterested. Now imagine another salesperson who listens first to what the customer needs, responds precisely to their concerns, and explains only the essentials in a clear and direct manner. The second salesperson not only communicates better, but also likely closes the sale more easily. That's the difference between talking a lot and communicating with impact. One focuses on themselves and their words, the other focuses on the other person and the objective of the message. Another crucial aspect is nonverbal language. We're often unaware that our posture, gestures, eye contact, and even the way we move our hands affect how others perceive us. You can deliver a perfect speech, but if you deliver it with your arms crossed, looking at the floor, and in a weak tone, the impact is drastically reduced. Conversely, a person who maintains an open posture, establishes eye contact, and accompanies their words with natural gestures generates an immediate sense of credibility. The human brain is designed to interpret these nonverbal elements unconsciously, so your physical presence can reinforce or weaken your message. The power of effective communication is also reflected in how we manage emotions when speaking. Often, tense or high-pressure situations generate anxiety, which can lead to hasty responses, impulsive comments, or awkward silences. Mastering communication involves developing the ability to regulate those emotions, maintaining a calm tone and a focused mind. This not only improves the quality of the message, but also conveys an image of control and emotional maturity. For example, during a workplace conflict, someone who responds calmly, explaining their points of view with respect and confidence, is more likely to resolve the problem positively than someone who reacts with anger or nervousness. Let's also consider the social impact of communicating effectively. People who speak clearly and confidently are often seen as natural leaders, even if they don't hold a formal leadership position. This happens because people tend to follow those who inspire confidence through their way of expressing themselves. Even in small settings, such as a group of friends or a family, someone who can articulate their thoughts clearly often becomes a role model that others listen to and respect. And this isn't a coincidence. It's a direct consequence of conveying confidence and being perceived as someone who knows what they're talking about. Mastering effective communication isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. We live in a world where ideas constantly compete for attention. Social media saturated with content, meetings with tight schedules, and quick conversations where every second counts. In this context, those who can express their ideas clearly and make an impact have a huge advantage. It's not about speaking louder or using complicated words, but about connecting, about making the other person understand and value what we say. This skill, when practiced and turned into a habit, transforms the way others perceive us and, consequently, the opportunities we face in life. Chapter number 2. Basics of Fast Thinking. Quick thinking is one of the most valuable skills when it comes to effective communication. In real life, you don't always have time to prepare a speech or rehearse your words in front of the mirror. Many of the most important situations arise without warning. An unexpected question in a meeting, a provocative comment during a negotiation, an interview where you're asked for an immediate answer, or a personal conversation where emotions are running high. In these moments, Your ability to react clearly and confidently in a matter of seconds makes the difference between emerging stronger or being trapped in silence or improvised responses that don't represent what you really wanted to say. But thinking quickly doesn't mean speaking impulsively. It means training your mind to process information and generate intelligent responses with control, something that can be developed with constant practice. Training your mind to react in seconds begins with understanding that the brain, in pressure situations, tends to take shortcuts. When we're nervous, we activate an automatic mode that often makes us say the first thing that comes to mind without considering the consequences. For example, when someone receives unexpected criticism, they may react defensively with an aggressive tone, or, conversely, remain silent, which can be interpreted as a lack of confidence. The key is learning to create a small mental space between the stimulus and the response, an extra second that allows you to organize your thoughts before speaking. That second of controlled pause, even if it seems minimal, can save a conversation, improve a negotiation, or avoid a conflict. This is trained by practicing conscious observation, listening fully to what is being said, taking a breath before responding, and focusing on the essence of our message rather than our immediate emotional reaction. There are very effective mental exercises for organizing ideas in real time. One of the simplest, yet most powerful, is rapid synthesis. Listening to or reading a short piece of content and immediately summarizing it in a single sentence that captures its essence. For example, if someone explains a problem to you at work in great detail, your mental challenge is to think, what's the core of what they're telling me? And then respond accordingly. Another useful exercise is keyword training. When someone asks you a complicated question, immediately identify 2 or 3 keywords from that question and build your response around them. This prevents rambling and helps maintain a logical order. It's also important to practice structured improvisation, which involves answering random questions or explaining concepts spontaneously, but following a basic structure. Main idea, brief explanation, and clear conclusion. This type of training develops your brain's ability to organize thoughts on the fly, reducing the risk of going blank or speaking nonsensically. A technique widely used by expert communicators is the so-called headline rule. Think of your answer as if it were a newspaper headline. This forces your mind to find a brief, compelling approach before developing additional details. For example, if someone asks you, how do you think we should address the team's low productivity? Instead of going off on a long, roundabout path, your answer can begin with a clear headline. We need to improve internal team coordination and motivation. From there, you can expand your response with concrete examples or suggestions. This habit not only helps you respond more quickly but also generates greater clarity in others' perceptions of what you say. However, thinking quickly isn't without risks, and one of the most common mistakes when speaking without reflection is impulsive responses that can lead to conflict or give a misleading impression. Often, when someone feels pressured, they end up saying things that don't reflect what they really think or that include words they later regret. This happens especially in heated discussions or in moments of strong emotional charge. A common example is when a boss makes a negative comment about your work and, instead of taking a second to process it, you respond with a defensive excuse or an annoyed tone. Although the intention isn't to be confrontational, the perception generated is one of resistance or lack of professionalism. The solution lies in developing self-awareness, recognizing emotions instantly and consciously deciding the tone and content of your response before speaking. Another common mistake is filling the silence with unnecessary words, known as talking for the sake of talking. When a person feels they need to respond quickly but isn't sure what to say, they tend to use filler words, repetitions, or explanations that don't quite get to the point. This can cause the audience to lose interest or make your message seem unprepared, even if you're improvising with good intentions. To avoid this, it's helpful to train yourself in the habit of responding with short, clear structures, even if you need a few extra seconds to organize your thoughts. A brief pause, accompanied by eye contact and deep breathing, is much more powerful than filling the space with empty phrases. A third mistake is being driven by fear of other people's judgment. Many people think so quickly about how they'll be perceived that they end up blocking their own ideas or saying things too cautiously. This can give the impression of insecurity or lack of preparation. For example, during a presentation, someone may know their topic perfectly, but when faced with a difficult question, they hesitate too long before answering or begin with phrases like, well, I'm not quite sure, but I think, which diminishes the audience's confidence. Training quick thinking involves accepting that not all answers have to be perfect, but they should be delivered with confidence and conviction. Even if you need to stall for time, There are strategic phrases like, "That's a great question, let me summarize the key point," that keep you in control of the conversation while you organize your thoughts. Properly trained quick thinking becomes a powerful tool that allows you to communicate clearly and confidently, even in unexpected scenarios. It's not about improvising for the sake of it, but rather learning to think in structures, manage the pace of your responses, and control your emotions. With constant practice, there comes a time when this skill becomes automatic. Your mind filters out what's important, eliminates what's unnecessary, and generates impactful messages without wasting time. This prepares you not only for complex conversations or important negotiations, but for any daily interaction, from answering an unexpected question to gracefully handling an awkward social situation. Mastering quick thinking is, ultimately, an advantage that sets you apart and puts you ahead in any area of life. Chapter number 3. How to structure a powerful speech. A powerful speech depends not only on the words chosen, but also on the structure that supports them. The human mind is designed to seek order and patterns in everything it perceives, and a well-structured message is understood and remembered much more easily than an unorganized, improvised one. Imagine for a moment listening to someone speak for 10 minutes without a clear direction. They begin with an idea, digress into an irrelevant detail, change the subject without concluding the previous one, and end without a clear central idea. Although their words may be interesting at times, the final feeling is one of confusion. In contrast, a speech with a defined opening, middle, and closing structure offers the listener a clear guide that takes them from beginning to end without getting lost along the way. This outline not only makes it easier for your audience to follow, but also allows you to maintain control of your message, regardless of whether it is a formal presentation, an important conversation, or a brief comment in a meeting. The opening is your letter of introduction to the listener's mind. It's the moment to capture their attention, spark their interest, and generate a reason for them to pay attention to what you have to say next. This can be achieved in different ways. By using a powerful question that connects with an audience need, presenting a surprising fact, telling a short story that creates empathy, or directly explaining the benefit they'll gain from listening to you. For example, if you're going to talk about leadership in a company, you could start by saying, "Did you know that more than 70% of employees leave their jobs not because of the salary, but because of the relationship with their boss?" That sentence alone captures attention and prepares the audience to want to know more. The key is to avoid flat beginnings like, "Today I'm going to talk to you about." That fail to generate anticipation or excitement. A good opening is short, to the point, and emotionally engaging, because it's the first impression that will shape the rest of the speech. Next comes the body, the central section where the main content is presented. Logical organization is key here. An effective way to organize your ideas is to use thematic blocks. 3 main points that progressively develop your argument. This number works well because it's easy to remember for both the speaker and the audience. For example, if you're presenting a technological innovation project, your 3 blocks could be the current problem it solves, the proposal you're putting forward, and the specific benefits of implementing it. Each block should flow naturally into the next, using smooth transitions that guide the listener from one point to the next without confusion. A good transition can be as simple as, "Now that we understand the problem, let's see how our proposal solves it." This way, you avoid abrupt jumps that break the connection. Furthermore, the body must balance information and clarity. Too much technical data without context can overwhelm, while information that's too superficial can weaken the message. The secret is to use examples, stories, and metaphors that make the content more digestible and connect emotionally with the listener. Finally, the closing is your chance to make your mark. Many people make the mistake of ending their speeches with weak phrases like, "Well, that was about it," or "That's what I wanted to say," which weakens the message. A powerful closing recaptures the central idea and reinforces it with emotional force, so that the listener takes away something clear and actionable. This can be achieved with a call to action. "Now it's up to us to make this decision and take the first step." An inspirational quote that summarizes the message, or a short story that leaves a clear lesson. Think of the closing as the final blow of a hammer. It's what fixes the idea in your audience's mind and determines whether they'll remember you or forget you. In fact, memory studies show that people tend to best remember the first and last things they hear, so the closing is a key moment you can't miss. Organizing your ideas logically and fluently doesn't mean memorizing the entire speech word for word, but rather understanding the structure and mastering it to the point of being able to adapt in a moment. A useful technique for achieving this is creating a simple outline with the main ideas and their supporting details. For example, opening, capturing attention with a question. Body, 3 key points with an example each. Closing, summary and call to action. This outline can be visually represented as a ladder where each rung represents a content block. By visualizing your speech this way, your mind can move from one block to the next without losing the thread, even if unexpected events arise, such as interruptions, questions, or changes in the available time. Another recommendation is to practice your speech aloud, using different words each time. This avoids the rigidity of verbatim memorization and makes your speaking more natural, in addition to training your ability to improvise without straying from the structure. Making your message memorable requires more than just information. It needs emotion and relevance. A sentence can be technically correct, but if it doesn't evoke anything in the listener, it will be easily forgotten. To make your message stick, you must connect with your audience's emotions, their aspirations, fears, desires, or values. A well-told personal story, a powerful metaphor, or a real-life example can make your speech not just understood, but felt. For example, instead of saying, "Teamwork improves company results," you can say, "I remember a project where 3 different departments worked together for the first time. In the end, we not only met the objective, but also discovered solutions we would never have imagined individually." That's the true power of teamwork. That story creates a mental image and an emotion that the audience will more easily remember. Additionally, it's important to strategically repeat the central idea of your speech. This doesn't mean saying the same thing over and over again, but rather reinforcing the key message at different times with different words. For example, if the central message is "innovation is key to growth," you can mention it at the beginning with a fact, reinforce it later with an example, and conclude with a related inspirational quote. This intentional repetition creates a resonance in the listener's mind, increasing the likelihood they'll remember it even after several days. Finally, consider your body language and tone of voice. A message delivered energetically, with well-placed pauses and consistent gestures, feels more authentic and powerful than one that's read or delivered in a monotonous manner. When you apply this opening, middle, and closing formula, organize your ideas logically, and focus on generating emotion and relevance, your speech becomes a memorable experience for your audience. It's no longer just information that goes unnoticed, but a message that inspires, moves, and leaves a lasting impression. Most importantly, this structure can be applied to any context, from a professional presentation to a conversation with a friend or a speech in front of hundreds of people. With practice, it becomes a natural part of your communication style, allowing you to project clarity and confidence in any situation. Chapter number 4. Controlling Nerves and Managing Stage Fright. Feeling nervous before speaking in public is a completely natural reaction. In fact, it's one of the human body's most common biological responses when it senses it's being evaluated or facing an unfamiliar situation. The feeling of butterflies in the stomach, sweaty palms, increased heart rate, or even a slight tremor in the voice aren't signs of weakness. They're the result of the release of adrenaline preparing the body to react. In other words, your body is energized because it perceives that what you're about to do is important. The good news is that this nervousness can be transformed into a powerful tool. Many people believe the goal is to eliminate nerves completely, but in reality, the secret lies in learning to manage them and use them as additional energy that gives strength and authenticity to your presentation. Great speakers, artists, and even professional athletes experience nerves before every presentation or competition. But what sets them apart is that they've learned to channel that energy into a better performance. When you accept that nervousness is normal, you begin to view it differently. Instead of interpreting it as a sign of insecurity, you can see it as a signal that you're alert and focused. For example, imagine you're about to give an important talk at your company. Your body begins to react. Your heart beats faster and you feel a slight tremor. If you interpret these sensations as a problem, you'll enter a cycle of anxiety that can block you. But if you see them as natural preparation, you can tell yourself, "My body is giving me extra energy to do well." This shift in perspective reduces tension and turns adrenaline into your ally. Studies even show that those who reinterpret nervousness as a positive signal achieve better results than those who try to eliminate it completely. One of the most effective ways to control nervousness is through conscious breathing. When we're anxious, our breathing tends to become shallow and rapid, which increases feelings of tension. Practicing deep breathing techniques helps stabilize the heart rate, oxygenate the brain, and generate a feeling of physical and mental calm. A simple exercise consists of inhaling deeply through the nose for 4 seconds, holding it for 2 seconds, and exhaling slowly through the mouth for 6 seconds. Repeating this 3 or 4 times before speaking can significantly reduce tension. Another useful technique is diaphragmatic breathing, which involves breathing so that the abdomen, not just the chest, expands. This type of breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for relaxation, and helps control trembling in the voice or hands. Body control is also key to managing stage fright. Nervousness often manifests itself in closed postures, sudden movements, or repetitive gestures such as fiddling with a pen or uncontrolled hand movements. Being aware of your posture and movements allows you to convey confidence, even if you feel tense inside. Before speaking, plant your feet firmly on the floor, keep your back straight, and your shoulders relaxed. Avoid crossing your arms or putting your hands in your pockets, as these gestures can be perceived as signs of insecurity. Practicing controlled movements, such as using your hands only to emphasize important points, helps channel nervous energy in a positive way. Even walking slowly across the stage or space while speaking can help you release tension and project dynamism. The power of pre-rehearsal cannot be underestimated. One of the biggest sources of nervousness is uncertainty about what you'll say or how you'll say it. Rehearsing reduces that uncertainty because it familiarizes you with the content and gives you confidence in your ability to deliver it. It's not about memorizing every word, as that can create more tension if you forget a part, but rather about mastering the structure and key points of your message. A good exercise is to practice in front of a mirror to observe your body language or record yourself with your phone to analyze your tone, pauses, and clarity of expression. You can also rehearse in front of a trusted friend or colleague who can give you honest feedback. The more times you practice, the less room there will be for messy improvisation, and the more comfortable you'll feel when speaking. Additionally, rehearsing beforehand allows you to anticipate potential obstacles. For example, you can practice how to react if you forget a part of your speech, if someone interrupts you, or if the technology fails. This creates a sense of control because you know that, no matter what happens, you have the resources to handle the situation. You can even prepare transitional phrases like, "Let me return to my previous point," or "Let's focus on the main idea," to help you get back on track in case of an unexpected event. This preparation doesn't eliminate nerves, but it gives you the confidence that you can handle any eventuality, which automatically reduces your anxiety level. An interesting aspect is that many people try to hide their nervousness, thinking it's too noticeable, when in reality the audience notices it much less than you think. For example, you may feel your voice trembling, but it's barely noticeable to others. Or you may think your hands are obviously shaking, when in reality almost no one notices. Remembering this also helps reduce the pressure. Most people aren't focused on judging every detail of your presentation, but rather on listening to your message. Keeping this in mind changes your approach. Instead of thinking, "They'll notice I'm nervous," you can focus on, "I'm going to convey my idea clearly." With time and practice, stage fright can be transformed into a driving force for performance. You'll even notice that a moderate level of nerves keeps you alert, gives you energy, and helps you connect better with your audience. The key is to accept physical sensations as part of the process, manage them with breathing techniques and body language, and always rely on prior preparation. When you master these tools, public speaking ceases to be an intimidating experience and becomes an opportunity for growth and impact. Nervousness ceases to be an obstacle and becomes your ally, driving you to communicate with more authenticity, more energy, and more confidence. Chapter number 5. The importance of body language. Body language is one of the most powerful components of communication, even more so than words themselves. Various studies have shown that a large part of the message an audience perceives comes from nonverbal cues. Your posture, gestures, eye contact, facial expression, and even the way you move through space. You can have a brilliant speech and solid content, but if your body sends contradictory signals, your message loses strength and credibility. On the contrary, body language that is consistent with your words reinforces your message and generates immediate trust. This is because humans interpret body language unconsciously. It is a tool our brain uses to detect congruence and authenticity in the person speaking to us. Gestures play an essential role in this dynamic. Our hands, arms, and face are natural extensions of the message and serve to give it emphasis and clarity. For example, slightly opening your hands with your palms visible conveys honesty and openness, while pointing a finger or crossing your arms can be interpreted as defensive or authoritarian. A speaker who uses natural, fluid gestures appears more relaxed and approachable, which creates a sense of trust with the audience. It's important that gestures accompany the message spontaneously and don't seem forced. Constantly moving your hands aimlessly or exaggerating gestures can be more distracting than helpful. A good practice is to record yourself during a presentation to observe which movements you make naturally and which ones you need to adjust. This way, you can train your body to emphasize your ideas in a coherent and professional manner. Posture is another key element of body language. An upright posture, with a straight back and relaxed shoulders, projects confidence and command of space. Conversely, slouching forward, hiding your hands in your pockets, or crossing your arms sends signals of insecurity, nervousness, or disinterest. A simple way to practice proper posture is to stand with your feet slightly apart, distributing your weight evenly, as if you were firmly rooted to the ground. This not only conveys confidence but also gives you physical stability, which is especially helpful when nervousness might make you feel unsteady or restless. In a face-to-face conversation, leaning your torso slightly toward your interlocutor demonstrates interest and a willingness to listen, while moving your body away can be perceived as rejection or displeasure, even if you don't intend to. Strategic movement is equally important. Many people, due to nervousness, tend to move around aimlessly, which creates distraction and conveys anxiety. Movement should be intentional and consistent with the message. Move closer to the audience when you want to emphasize an important point, move sideways to signal a change of topic, or use the stage space to interact with different segments of the audience. A speaker who masters their movement is perceived as confident, dynamic, and in control of their surroundings. The key is to find a balance, neither remaining motionless like a statue, which can appear rigid, nor moving aimlessly, which can be perceived as a lack of preparation. Movement should stem from the content and have a clear purpose. The synchronization between your body and your words is essential for generating a compelling message. A simple example: if you talk about something positive, but your facial expression is serious or your tone of voice sounds dull, the message feels incongruous. The listener's brain picks up on this disconnect and, although not always consciously, generates mistrust. Conversely, when your face shows enthusiasm while explaining an exciting idea, or when your tone of voice becomes calm and firm when talking about something serious, your communication gains authenticity. Even strategic silences, accompanied by a pause, can lend more weight to an idea than hundreds of words. That's why it's important to practice not only what you say, but how you say it, including your facial expression, your pauses, your tone, and your movements. One of the most common body language mistakes is unwittingly using signals of insecurity. Constantly touching your hair, crossing your arms, avoiding eye contact, playing with objects like pens or phones, or rocking from foot to foot can detract from the impact of your message. These gestures, although involuntary, send the signal that you're not entirely sure of what you're saying or of yourself. To correct this, the first step is awareness. Recognizing what habits you have when you're nervous and replacing them with more controlled behaviors. For example, if you tend to hide your hands, you can train yourself to keep them visible and use them only to emphasize important points. If you avoid direct gaze, you can practice balanced eye contact, moving your gaze naturally between different people in the audience, without staring at one point or looking at the floor. A useful exercise to improve your body language is to record yourself during a speech practice and observe it silently. Ask yourself, does my posture project confidence? Are my gestures supportive or distracting? Do I appear nervous or relaxed? By muting, you can focus exclusively on what your body is communicating. Another strategy is to practice in front of a mirror or ask for feedback from someone you trust. Over time, appropriate gestures and postures become an automatic habit, freeing your mind to focus on the content and connecting with your audience. Body language not only helps you communicate more powerfully, but it also influences how you feel while speaking. Adopting open postures and firm gestures sends a signal to your brain that you're in control, which boosts your confidence. In fact, it's been shown that adopting power poses, such as standing with your feet squared and shoulders back for a couple of minutes before a presentation, can reduce levels of the stress hormone cortisol and increase feelings of personal confidence. This means that working on your body language not only improves how others see you, but also how you perceive yourself. When your body and your words are aligned, your message gains unique power. People not only hear what you say, but they feel what you convey. A speaker who speaks clearly, moves with intention, uses their hands to reinforce key ideas, and maintains a consistent facial expression projects authenticity and confidence. In a world where attention spans are limited and perceptions are formed in seconds, mastering your body language is an advantage that can make the difference between being remembered or forgotten, between generating trust or generating doubt. With practice and awareness, anyone can develop body language that enhances their message and takes it to a whole new level of communicative impact. Chapter number 6. The voice as a tool of influence. The voice is one of the most powerful tools of communication, capable of conveying emotions, generating trust, and even influencing how others perceive your authority. Having good content isn't enough if your tone is monotonous, your pace is uncontrolled, or your pauses are non-existent. The way you use your voice can elevate your message or, conversely, diminish its impact. Every variation in tone, every change in pace, and every well-placed pause sends direct signals to the subconscious of your listener. A firm, well-projected tone generates respect and attention, while a dull or shaky tone can convey insecurity, even if the content of your words is solid. Therefore, learning to manage your voice isn't just about speaking louder, but about using it intelligently to persuade, motivate, and connect emotionally with your audience. Your tone of voice is the first element people perceive when you speak. Whether you're giving a presentation, participating in a meeting, or responding to someone in a casual conversation, your tone defines the atmosphere of the interaction. A warm and friendly tone generates closeness and empathy, while a firm and deep tone projects authority and confidence. For example, if a leader wants to give a clear and urgent instruction, a firm and slightly lower tone can generate the necessary sense of seriousness without sounding aggressive. Conversely, if the goal is to motivate a team after an important achievement, an enthusiastic and elevated tone generates positive energy. The key is to learn to intentionally vary your tone according to the message you want to convey, avoiding a monotonous tone that can be boring or an excess of energy that can seem exaggerated. The pace of your voice also has a profound impact on how your message is perceived. Speaking too quickly can give the impression of nervousness or a desire to get it over with, making it difficult for the listener to process the information. On the other hand, speaking too slowly can sound bored or give the impression of insecurity. The goal is to find a balanced pace that allows for clarity without losing dynamism. A useful technique is to imagine that your audience needs a second to process each important idea. If you speak with that pace in mind, your message will feel clearer and more structured. Additionally, slightly changing your pace at different points in your speech can maintain the listener's interest. Speeding up a bit when telling an exciting anecdote or slowing down when explaining a key concept creates a more engaging and persuasive listening experience. Pauses are perhaps one of the most underestimated resources when speaking. Many people feel they must fill every second of silence with words, when in reality, a well-used silence has enormous power. Strategic pauses serve three main purposes: to give the audience time to process the information, to generate anticipation before an important idea, and to give emotional emphasis to certain moments in the speech. For example, before presenting a key conclusion, a pause of 1 or 2 seconds can increase the impact of the following sentence. Similarly, after a rhetorical question, a brief silence can invite reflection and maintain attention. Additionally, pauses help control the pace and avoid filler words like well, or which often appear when we are afraid of silence. To master vocal projection, it's important to work on breathing and vocal resonance. Speaking at an appropriate volume doesn't mean shouting, but rather projecting the sound so that it reaches the entire audience clearly and effortlessly. Diaphragmatic breathing is key to this. Instead of using only the chest, the diaphragm is used, allowing you to sustain long phrases without running out of air and generating a fuller, more stable sound. A practical exercise is to place one hand on your abdomen and ensure it expands as you inhale deeply. Then, as you exhale, maintain a constant flow of air while pronouncing a complete sentence. Practicing reading aloud at different volumes and pitches also strengthens your vocal cords and improves your ability to project without strain. Another useful exercise is the controlled hum, which consists of emitting a continuous sound with your mouth closed, feeling the vibration in your head and chest. This helps you find a natural and relaxed tone and improves vocal resonance. It's also advisable to hydrate properly before speaking and avoid foods or drinks that can affect vocal clarity, such as dairy products or very cold drinks just before a presentation. The voice is a physical instrument and, like any other, requires care and training. The use of strategic silences, combined with good tone and timing, can completely change how your audience perceives your authority and confidence. For example, if after giving an important figure in a meeting you pause briefly while maintaining eye contact with a group, You create a powerful impact that highlights the importance of the information. Or, when telling an emotional story, a silence just before the conclusion can create tension and anticipation that captures everyone's attention. These silences also allow you to think before continuing, reducing the risk of mistakes or digressing. Pausing may feel awkward at first, but with practice, it becomes a natural tool that strengthens your control of the conversation. The voice, when managed with intention, becomes a resource of influence that goes beyond words. A single phrase can feel inspiring or intimidating depending on the tone in which it's delivered. A message can seem urgent or relaxed depending on the pace, and a well-placed pause can give it more weight than any additional adjective. Mastering these variables not only improves the quality of your speeches, but also your daily communication. From a phone call to an important negotiation, your voice can convey the confidence, empathy, and clarity necessary for your message to be not only heard, but also felt and remembered. Chapter number 7. Thinking fast under pressure. It's one of the most valued communication skills because important situations rarely allow time to prepare a detailed speech. A job interview, an unexpected business meeting, a difficult question during a presentation, or even an unexpected comment in everyday conversation can test you in a matter of seconds. In those moments, mental clarity and the ability to articulate ideas without hesitation become decisive advantages. Many people believe that improvisation is a natural gift possessed only by certain individuals, but the reality is that it's a trainable skill. With constant practice and clear strategies, anyone can learn to improvise accurately and confidently, preventing nerves or mental blocks from sabotaging their performance. The first key to improvising clearly is listening carefully. Often, nervousness causes us to start thinking about what to answer even before the other person finishes speaking, resulting in incomplete or out-of-context responses. Taking a second to fully listen to the question or situation allows the brain to more accurately process what is needed. This not only helps you give more coherent answers, but also projects calm and confidence. Even a small gesture, such as nodding while listening or maintaining eye contact, shows that you are truly present and focused on understanding before responding. This simple practice reduces the risk of impulsive responses and gives you the time you need to organize your thoughts. Another essential strategy is the use of quick mental structures. When the brain is under pressure, it needs a predefined order to avoid chaos. A simple but effective structure is the 3-step technique. First, define the main idea. Second, give an example or reason to support it. Third, conclude with a point for action or reflection. For example, if in a meeting someone asks you, "Why should we invest in this new project?" you can respond, "First, because the market is growing rapidly. Second, because our competition is already gaining an advantage in this sector. And third, because if we act now, we can position ourselves as leaders before it's too late." This structure not only makes it easier for you to think faster, but it also gives the impression that you have clarity and control over the issue. An additional tool for improvising clearly is the use of transitional phrases. These act as a small breathing space that gives you valuable seconds to organize your response. Phrases like, "That's an interesting question. Let me put it into perspective." Or, "Before I answer directly, let's review the key point." Create a sense of confidence while your mind finishes constructing the idea. These transitions not only buy time but also help maintain a professional tone, even when the question is complex or unexpected. With practice, they become second nature and allow you to avoid awkward silences or filler words that denote insecurity. Answering difficult questions requires additional focus because it's not just your clarity that's at stake, but also your ability to manage emotions. Challenging questions, direct criticism, or provocative comments can trigger defensiveness, which tends to generate impulsive or aggressive responses. The key is to maintain emotional control. Instead of reacting, respond with a brief pause that shows you're processing the information, and then respond with facts, not emotions. For example, if someone says, "Don't you think your proposal is too risky?" Instead of responding defensively with a "No, not at all," you can say, "I understand your concern. Risk is an important factor, and that's why we've developed 3 specific measures to mitigate it." This type of response transforms a potentially contentious situation into an opportunity to demonstrate leadership and strategic thinking. Mental block is one of the biggest fears when thinking quickly under pressure. That feeling of going blank can generate anxiety and cause confidence to crumble. One of the main causes of this block is emotional overarousal. The brain focuses so much on the feeling of pressure that it temporarily reduces the ability to access memory. One way to prevent it is to mentally prepare yourself with visualization techniques. Before an important situation, imagine possible scenarios and how you would handle them. Another useful strategy is to have emergency phrases, short comments you can use while you reorganize your ideas, such as, "That's a great question, let me give the best possible context," or "Let me summarize the key point of this." These phrases not only buy you time, but they also keep the conversation flowing while your mind refocuses. Improvisation training also involves working under simulated pressure. You can practice with exercises such as answering random questions on any topic in 30 seconds, or explaining a complex concept in 1 minute using only simple words. Another useful exercise is constraint improvisation. For example, try explaining a topic without using fillers like or well, or responding using only 3 sentences. These exercises force your brain to organize information efficiently and eliminate mental clutter, developing communication reflexes that are automatically activated in real-life situations. Breathing plays an important role in mental clarity. When pressure increases, we tend to breathe shallowly, which reduces the oxygen available to the brain and impairs our ability to think clearly. Practicing deep breathing before and during an interaction helps keep your mind clear. Even during a response, a short pause to inhale and exhale in a controlled manner can give you the seconds you need to gather your thoughts without your audience perceiving it as insecurity. In fact, well-placed pauses can increase the impact of your words, making you appear more thoughtful and confident. Another key element of quick thinking is continuous preparation. Although improvisation seems like the opposite of preparation, they actually depend on each other. The more you know about a topic, the easier it is to improvise on it. Therefore, cultivating the habit of staying informed and continually reviewing key points in your area of work gives you a solid foundation for answering unexpected questions. Even if you don't know the exact answer, you can provide valuable context or commit to a follow-up without losing credibility. For example, saying, "I don't have the exact number right now, but I can send it to you at the end of the meeting with the updated data," projects transparency and control, rather than insecurity. Ultimately, thinking quickly under pressure doesn't mean always giving the perfect answer, but rather having the ability to remain calm, structure ideas clearly, and convey confidence, even in the face of uncertainty. When you practice these strategies, the fear of making mistakes diminishes because you know you have the resources to handle any situation. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to demonstrate confidence and adaptability, highly valued qualities in both professional and personal settings. Over time, your mind learns to react naturally, turning pressured moments into scenarios where you can excel instead of blocking yourself. Chapter number 8. Active Listening. The Secret to a Good Conversation. Active listening is one of the most powerful skills in communication, yet paradoxically, it's often the least practiced. Many people believe that listening consists solely of remaining silent while the other person speaks, but in reality, it goes much further. It involves full attention, understanding the message, interpreting nonverbal language, and a coherent response that demonstrates you truly understood what was said. When you develop the ability to actively listen, conversations become more fluid, relationships are strengthened, and the opportunities for authentic connection increase significantly. In any context, personal, professional, or social, knowing how to listen is what differentiates a good communicator from an exceptional one. Listening to respond better doesn't just mean grasping the words, but also understanding the meaning and emotion behind them. For example, if a coworker says, "I'm worried about the project because we're running late," a superficial listener might respond with something generic like, "Don't worry, we'll figure it out," while an active listener would notice the word worried and the tone of voice, responding more empathetically, "I understand your concern. What part do you think is causing the most delay so we can focus on that?" This difference shows that you were truly paying attention, which builds trust and opens the space for a more productive conversation. Listening this way requires focusing not only on the words, but also on the other person's intonation, gestures, facial expressions, and pace of speech. An effective technique for demonstrating that you're actively listening is the use of verbal and nonverbal feedback. Verbal feedback consists of using short phrases like, "I understand," "clear," or "interesting," while the other person is speaking, without interrupting the flow of the conversation. Nonverbal feedback, on the other hand, relies on body language, nodding, maintaining eye contact, and adopting an open posture. These subtle signals communicate to the other person that they have your full attention, which increases the sense of connection. Even small gestures, such as leaning slightly forward or avoiding constantly looking at your phone, convey respect and a willingness to listen, qualities that are increasingly valued in a world saturated with distractions. Showing genuine interest is another key aspect. Often, we listen only to respond, not to understand, which can lead to mechanical responses and emotional disconnection. Practicing genuine interest means truly focusing on the other person's experience. This is achieved by asking open-ended questions that invite deeper exploration, such as, "How did you feel about that outcome?" Or, "What do you think we could improve for next time?" These questions demonstrate that you're not only interested in what the other person is saying, but also how they experience and perceive it. Additionally, recalling important details from previous conversations, such as the name of a project, a key date, or a personal preference, reinforces the perception that you value your interlocutor as an individual, not just as a source of information. Avoiding monologues is another key point for creating interaction and maintaining dynamic conversations. A common mistake, especially in professional settings or when you have deep knowledge of a topic, is to talk too much without giving the other person space to participate. This can make the conversation feel one-sided, diminishing the other person's interest and willingness to share their ideas. An effective conversation is more like a dance than a monologue. Both speakers actively participate, alternating turns and building on each other's contributions. To achieve this, it's helpful to apply the 50-50 rule. Try to match the amount of time you talk to the amount you listen, adjusting according to the situation. For example, if someone is telling you about a personal problem, your primary role should be to listen and ask questions, not to dominate the dialogue with your own stories. Another technique to encourage interaction is the use of paraphrases and brief summaries. Repeating in your own words what the other person said not only ensures that you fully understood the message, but also shows the other person that what they said was important to you. For example, if someone says, "I'm frustrated because I feel like my ideas aren't being taken into account," you can respond, "So you feel like your contributions aren't being considered, is that correct?" This not only validates their emotions, but also opens the door to a more constructive conversation about how to resolve the problem. This technique, used naturally, can completely change the dynamic of an interaction, especially in situations of tension or conflict. Active listening also involves strategically managing silence. Many people feel uncomfortable when there's a pause in a conversation and try to quickly fill it with words, but silences can be powerful tools. Giving a few seconds of space after someone shares something important allows them to reflect and, sometimes, delve deeper. For example, when a coworker says, "I'm not sure if we should pursue this strategy," instead of responding immediately, you can wait a moment, allowing room for them to expand on their point. These kinds of pauses also send an implicit message of respect, that what they said is important enough to warrant careful consideration. One of the most important benefits of active listening is that it improves your ability to respond accurately and relevantly. By better understanding the context and emotions of the other person, you can adjust your tone, your words, and your approach to respond, creating a positive impact. This is especially valuable in high-pressure or conflict-ridden environments, where an impulsive response can escalate the situation. In contrast, a response based on attentive listening can diffuse tensions, build trust, and open the door to collaborative solutions. For example, in a meeting where someone harshly questions your proposal, listening attentively and responding with a calm tone and arguments based on their concerns generates much more respect than reacting defensively. Active listening not only transforms individual conversations, but also impacts your reputation as a communicator. People tend to feel valued and understood when someone truly listens to them, which strengthens relationships and opens up opportunities for collaboration. On a personal level, active listening can improve bonds with friends, partners, and family. On a professional level, it can make you stand out as a leader, negotiator, or trusted partner. This is because, in a world where everyone wants to be heard, those who develop the ability to listen become a valuable and trusted resource for others. With practice, active listening becomes an automatic habit. You can start by setting aside a few minutes a day to converse with someone without distractions, focusing solely on listening and understanding. Little by little, you'll notice how your conversations become more meaningful, how misunderstandings decrease, and how the quality of your relationships improve. Active listening doesn't mean you have to agree with everything you hear, but rather that you are willing to understand first before responding. This simple yet powerful attitude is the foundation of genuine and effective communication that can open doors in any area of your life. Chapter number 9. Persuasion and the Art of Influencing with Words. Persuasion doesn't mean manipulation, but rather guiding people toward a decision or vision in a way that makes them feel understood and motivated. The art of influencing with words is a skill based on well-studied psychological principles and communication techniques that awaken emotions, generate trust, and promote action. From everyday conversations to the most demanding professional presentations, persuasion is present in almost everything. Convincing a team to adopt a new strategy, negotiating with a client, motivating a work group, or even inspiring a friend to make a positive decision. Understanding how the human mind works and how words can activate emotions and decisions is the first step to becoming an influential communicator. One of the most powerful psychological principles of persuasion is reciprocity. People tend to reciprocate when they feel they've received something of value. This doesn't necessarily mean something material. It can be helpful advice, valuable information, or even sincere attention. For example, if you first offer relevant data in a meeting that solves a problem for your interlocutor, you increase that person's willingness to consider your proposal. Another key principle is authority. People tend to listen to and follow those they perceive as experts or leaders on a topic. Therefore, when communicating, it's important to back up your claims with experience, evidence, or concrete examples that demonstrate you know what you're talking about. This doesn't mean bragging, but rather building trust by displaying knowledge and competence. The principle of social proof also plays a key role. Most people make decisions based on what others have already done or approved. A clear example is product reviews. Seeing hundreds of people recommending an item creates a sense of security when purchasing it. In your communications, mentioning success stories, testimonials, or examples of people or groups who have already made the decision you're proposing can have a similar effect. For example, when presenting an innovative idea to your team, you can add, "Leading companies in our sector have already implemented similar solutions and achieved remarkable results," reinforcing your proposal with an element of external validation. Another important principle is consistency. People tend to act on what they've already said or done previously. This means that if you get someone to express initial agreement, even on something small, they're more likely to continue supporting a larger idea related to that initial agreement. For example, before proposing a structural change, you can ask, "Do we all agree that we want to improve our results this quarter?" Once you receive a yes, your next proposal will be more receptive because you've already aligned the audience with a shared value. This technique is used in sales, negotiations, and leadership, but it also works in one-on-one conversations. Now, persuasion goes beyond psychological principles. It also requires an emotional vehicle, and that's where storytelling comes in. Telling stories is one of the most effective ways to connect with an audience because the human brain processes stories differently than cold data. It activates areas related to emotions, memory, and empathy. A well-told story not only conveys information but also allows the listener to see themselves reflected in it. For example, instead of saying, "Our product improves productivity by 20%, you can tell the story of a real customer. 3 months ago, a small design firm decided to implement our tool. In the first month, they were able to reduce their delivery times by 20%, and best of all, the team told us they now get home earlier and with less stress." This narrative turns a statistic into a human experience, which builds connection and trust. To use storytelling effectively, you need 3 basic elements: a character the audience can identify with, a conflict or challenge that sparks interest, and a resolution that shows how your idea, product, or proposal was key to overcoming it. This framework works because it reflects the basic emotional arc of any human experience: facing a problem, finding a solution, and achieving a positive outcome. Stories don't need to be long or complicated. Even a brief personal example can change the tone of a conversation. For example, in a leadership presentation, sharing how you faced a difficult decision and what you learned from it can humanize your message and increase your credibility. High-impact closing strategies are the culmination of every persuasive effort. It's not enough to present arguments and tell stories. You need a clear and motivating call to action. An effective closing isn't simply repeating what was said, but guiding the audience to the next step with a message that summarizes the value of your proposal and evokes a sense of urgency or commitment. For example, if you're presenting a project, a powerful closing might be, "We've seen how this strategy not only reduces costs but also opens the door to new growth opportunities. The time to act is now, and we have the ability to do it together." Here, you combine a brief summary with a concrete invitation that reinforces the importance of immediate action. An additional closing technique is to use the principle of future visualization, which involves inviting the audience to imagine the concrete benefit of accepting your proposal. For example, Imagine that in 6 months we see a significant increase in sales and a team working with less friction. All of that starts with the decision we make today. This technique mobilizes the mind toward a concrete goal and generates a sense of real possibility. Another powerful approach is to use a final question that stimulates reflection and participation, such as, "What would we lose if we don't take advantage of this opportunity now?" These types of questions actively engage the audience and reinforce the sense of urgency. It's important to note that persuasion is not a technique to be used for selfish or manipulative purposes. People perceive authenticity and react negatively when they feel they are being manipulated. Therefore, effective persuasion is based on honesty, transparency, and mutual benefit. If your goal is genuinely to help, improve a situation, or add value, your message will be much stronger, and your credibility will remain intact over the long term. Persuading with words involves understanding the psychological principles that govern decision-making, using the power of stories to connect emotionally, and closing with a high-impact message that invites action. Every conversation is an opportunity to apply these tools, and with practice, they become a natural communication style. Being persuasive doesn't mean speaking more or louder, but rather speaking with intention, empathy, and clarity, ensuring that people not only listen but also feel inspired to act. Chapter number 10. How to handle hostile or difficult audiences. Facing hostile or difficult audiences is one of the greatest challenges for anyone who speaks in public, whether a leader, a teacher, a speaker, or someone simply having to present an important idea. A hostile audience doesn't necessarily mean a group that rejects you outright. It can be people who show skepticism, who constantly interrupt, who express direct disagreement, or whose body language makes it clear they're not convinced by what you're saying. Handling these types of situations with professionalism, respect, and firmness is an essential skill, because these moments test your emotional control, your mental clarity, and your ability to influence even in adverse environments. The first fundamental technique for regaining control of the room is to remain calm and project serenity. When you sense hostility, your natural instinct may be to become defensive, raise your voice, or accelerate the pace, but this only increases the tension. On the contrary, maintaining an open posture, deep breathing, and a controlled tone of voice sends a clear message of confidence and command of the situation. A strategic pause before responding to a hostile interruption not only gives you time to think, but also shows that you're not getting caught up in the emotion of the moment. This calmness is perceived as authoritative, and is often enough to sway the rest of the audience in your favor, even if they don't agree with your point of view. Another key strategy is to establish interaction rules from the beginning of your presentation. For example, you can politely say, "There will be time for questions at the end," or "Feel free to raise your hand if you have an important comment, and we'll try to address it without interrupting the flow of the presentation." This creates a framework of respect that gives you more tools to handle a subsequent interruption. You can remind the audience of the rules with a simple phrase like, "I appreciate your comment. We'll address it in the Q&A section." This way, you avoid directly confronting the person and maintain order without losing cordiality. Responding respectfully and firmly is one of the most valuable skills in this context. Many people believe that firmness is opposed to courtesy, when in fact they can coexist. For example, if someone harshly challenges your information by saying something like, "That doesn't make any sense," an emotional response might be, "Of course that makes sense, you're missing the point," which would create a conflict. In contrast, a firm and respectful response would be, "Thank you for your perspective. Let me explain why we came to this conclusion." This technique of thanking first and then arguing diffuses the initial tension and allows you to take control of the content. Even if the other person insists on maintaining a hostile tone, your controlled and objective response makes you appear to be the more reasonable person in the interaction, which often sways the audience in your favor. An effective tool for managing interruptions is the use of conversational bridges. For example, if someone interrupts with a topic not directly related to the point you're making, you can say, "That's a valid comment and definitely deserves attention. What I can do is note it and give you time at the end of the presentation to discuss it in depth." These types of responses acknowledge the value of the intervention without allowing the main dynamic to derail. If the interruption is repeated or aggressive, you can reinforce control of the room by saying in a calm but firm tone, "I appreciate your input, but I need to finish this point so everyone can understand the full context. Then we can discuss your point in the detail it deserves." This positions you as a conversation leader who doesn't shy away from conflict, but also doesn't get sucked into it. Open criticism is also part of these situations and can generate discomfort if not handled well. The secret is to differentiate between constructive and destructive criticism. If the criticism is constructive, accept it openly. That's an interesting point. Thank you for pointing it out. Could I expand a little more so we all understand your perspective? This turns a potential opponent into a collaborator and can even enrich your presentation. On the other hand, if the criticism is destructive or personal, it's best not to respond in kind, but rather keep the focus on the facts. I respect your opinion. Allow me to share the data we have so we all have the same information. Keeping the conversation grounded in facts, not emotions, is key to reducing hostility. A useful way to regain the audience's attention when you sense a tense atmosphere is to use a brief pause followed by a direct question to the group. For example, if you notice murmurs or gestures of widespread disagreement, you can stop and say, "This point seems to be generating different opinions. What do others think about this?" This type of intervention opens up dialogue, diffuses individual tension, and allows you to reframe your message based on the general feedback. Often, when a hostile audience feels they have space to express themselves, the atmosphere relaxes and becomes more collaborative. It's also essential to work on your body language during these situations. Avoid defensive postures like crossing your arms or pointing, and opt for an open stance with relaxed arms and balanced eye contact. If you walk, do so with purpose and without showing haste. Each step should convey control, not discomfort. Maintaining a calm demeanor and avoiding expressions of annoyance or disdain are equally important, as any negative gesture can amplify the conflict. Finally, one of the best ways to handle difficult audiences is to prepare in advance for potential conflict scenarios. Before an important presentation, make a list of possible difficult or critical questions and craft clear, respectful responses. Practice with someone you trust taking a critical role so you can practice your responses in a controlled environment. Over time, this practice strengthens your ability to remain calm, structure your thoughts, and respond firmly, even under pressure. When you successfully manage a difficult audience, you not only regain control of the situation, but you also gain respect that goes beyond the content of your presentation. People perceive you as a communicator who knows how to listen, who responds respectfully, and who maintains control without losing humanity. This combination is extremely valuable because it positions you as a trustworthy leader, capable of generating dialogue even in the midst of disagreement. And that, in the end, is one of the greatest achievements of a good speaker. Not convincing everyone by force, but creating the space so that even opposing opinions can find a point of understanding and mutual respect. Chapter number 11. Speaking in meetings and professional settings. Speaking in meetings and professional settings is a common scenario in modern work life, but not everyone knows how to do it with confidence, clarity, and purpose. Unlike a prepared speech before a large audience, meetings are often more dynamic spaces, where you're expected to actively participate, answer unexpected questions, and communicate your ideas directly and effectively. Here, every word counts, because what you say and how you say it can influence important decisions, impact your reputation, and open, or close, opportunities for professional growth. Understanding the differences between formal and informal presentations, learning to explain complex ideas simply, and building trust and credibility are essential to excelling in any work environment. Formal and informal presentations differ primarily in the level of preparation, structure, and language. A formal presentation, for example, to a management committee, typically requires a clear script, verified data, professional visual aids, and a tone of communication aligned with the organization's hierarchy. In these contexts, every detail counts, from the use of appropriate technical language to the care of attire and posture. An informal meeting, such as a team brainstorming session, typically allows for greater flexibility. The language can be more relatable, improvisation is encouraged, and the focus is more on collaboration than presentation. However, both situations require clarity and respect, because even a seemingly casual comment can influence others' perception of you. The key is to assess the context. Is it a critical decision-making space where your message must sound impeccable and professional? Or is it a creative environment where you can use a more relaxed tone without losing focus? Explaining complex ideas simply is a particularly valuable skill in professional meetings, where time is limited and participants' attention is often divided between multiple tasks and concerns. A technical idea or a multi-phased project can sound confusing if explained with excessive technical detail or long, cluttered sentences. The key is to summarize without losing meaning. A useful technique is to use analogies or concrete examples. For example, if you need to explain a change in the company's technology strategy, you can say, basically, what we're doing is changing from a one-lane road to a four-lane highway. The destination is the same, but we'll get there faster and with less risk of traffic jams. These kinds of comparisons facilitate immediate understanding, even for those without technical knowledge of the subject. Another effective tool is to structure your explanation using the rule of 3. First, explain what the idea is. Second, why it's important. And third, how it will impact the team or organization. For example, we are implementing a new management system, what it is, because it will reduce data processing time by 40%, why it's important, and that will allow us to respond more quickly to our clients and reduce errors, how it impacts. This structure avoids rambling and generates a logical flow that helps your message be remembered. Additionally, it's always helpful to accompany your explanations with simple visuals such as graphs, diagrams, or summary tables, which visually reinforce the key points without overwhelming the audience with too much information. Building trust and credibility at work is another fundamental pillar when speaking in meetings. Credibility isn't built solely on technical knowledge, but also on the way you communicate and your overall attitude. Speaking with a confident tone, maintaining eye contact with your listeners, using respectful language, and avoiding excessive filler words contribute to projecting confidence. For example, if you're presenting a results report, avoid phrases like, I think, or more or less, and replace them with firm expressions like, the results show, or the data confirms. Confidence in language doesn't mean arrogance. It's about conveying clarity and mastery of the subject. Active listening also increases your credibility. Meetings aren't monologues. You should show openness to others' ideas, answer questions respectfully, and, when necessary, honestly admit if you don't have a piece of information at the moment, offering to verify it later. This transparency builds more trust than trying to improvise an answer that isn't entirely accurate. Furthermore, remembering and using participants' names when commenting on their contributions, as Laura mentioned a moment ago, demonstrates respect and attention, creating a more collaborative environment. Another valuable practice is to anticipate potential questions or concerns. If you're presenting a proposal, think ahead about what objections might arise and prepare clear answers. For example, if you're presenting a new procedure and you know the team might be concerned about the additional workload, you can address the issue proactively. We know implementation will require additional initial effort, so we're proposing a support phase for the first 2 weeks. This approach shows that you've thought through the real implications of your proposal, which strengthens your position as someone who's trustworthy and prepared. Time management is also crucial. A speech that's too long can lead to frustration, while one that's too short can give the impression of a lack of preparation. Learning to summarize key points and respecting the allotted time demonstrates professionalism. Even in an informal meeting, mentally organizing what you'll say into a brief outline, topic introduction, main point, conclusion, can make a big difference. Finally, remember that professional communication doesn't end when you speak. Follow-up is just as important. Sending a summary email, clarifying any outstanding questions, or providing additional information demonstrates commitment and reinforces the credibility you displayed during the meeting. Every interaction in a professional setting builds your reputation as a communicator, and mastering these skills makes you someone whose opinion is valued and whose ideas are more likely to be heard and implemented. Speaking well in meetings and professional settings isn't a matter of speaking more or using complex words, but rather providing clarity, focus, and respect, creating an environment where everyone can understand, participate, and trust what is being proposed. This skill, practiced intentionally, can make a significant difference in your growth within any organization and open doors to new leadership and professional development opportunities. Chapter number 12. High-level interpersonal communication. High-level interpersonal communication isn't just about speaking well or having a good vocabulary, but about establishing deep and meaningful connections that positively impact those around us. We live in a world where interactions often become superficial, quick, and driven by technology. Therefore, the ability to effortlessly maintain in-depth conversations, build trust in just a few minutes, and demonstrate genuine empathy becomes a huge advantage both personally and professionally. A quality conversation not only conveys information, it creates an emotional experience in which both parties feel heard, understood, and valued. Effortlessly maintaining deep conversations begins with the ability to actively listen and ask thought-provoking questions. Many people feel that having a meaningful conversation requires pondering grand philosophical themes or complex questions, But the reality is that the best conversations often emerge from genuine curiosity about the other person. Questions like, what was the most challenging thing about your week? Or, what motivated you to make that decision? Create space for the other person to share important aspects of their life beyond the superficial. The key is to create an environment where the other person feels comfortable opening up, which requires eliminating distractions, providing cues, such as nodding or using appropriate facial expressions, and showing a genuine willingness to listen without judgment. Eye contact plays a fundamental role in these interactions. Maintaining it naturally conveys interest, confidence, and authenticity. It's not about staring intimidatingly, but rather finding a balance between meeting your interlocutor's eyes and briefly looking away to ensure the interaction feels comfortable and organic. Avoiding eye contact can convey disinterest or insecurity, while excessive eye contact can create discomfort. Practicing relaxed eye contact, accompanied by open body language, uncrossed arms, upright posture, calm movements, creates an environment of trust where the conversation flows without invisible barriers. Empathy is another essential pillar. Putting yourself in someone else's shoes doesn't just mean understanding their words, but also their emotions and the context behind them. For example, if someone comments, "I'm really frustrated with my team," an empathetic response wouldn't be immediate advice like, "Well, you should talk to them," but rather something like, "It must be really hard to feel like you don't have the support you need. Do you want to tell me what happened?" These types of responses validate the other person's feelings, which makes them feel understood. Empathy also involves adjusting your tone of voice and body language to the other person's emotional state. A gentle tone when someone shares a difficult experience, or an enthusiastic tone when celebrating an achievement. Building trust in just a few minutes is possible when you demonstrate authenticity, consistency, and respect. Authenticity is reflected in your willingness to be transparent and honest, without pretending to be someone you're not. People often sense a lack of authenticity even before you realize it. Therefore, it's better to admit when you don't know something or when you need time to provide an answer, rather than feigning knowledge or confidence. Consistency is demonstrated by aligning your words with your actions. If you promise something during the conversation, follow through. This behavior creates a history of trustworthiness, even in brief interactions. Respect, on the other hand, is demonstrated by valuing the other person's time, avoiding unnecessary interruptions, and maintaining an open attitude, even if you don't agree with their point of view. Another determining factor in establishing a strong interpersonal connection is the management of nonverbal language. Often, what we don't say with words communicates more than any speech. A firm handshake, a sincere smile, or a nod of approval can change the entire tone of the interaction. Similarly, paying attention to the other person's nonverbal communication gives you valuable clues about how they're really feeling. For example, if you notice someone crossing their arms and avoiding your gaze, they may be uncomfortable or defensive, which indicates you should adjust your approach to create a more relaxed atmosphere. High-level interpersonal communication also involves knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give in a conversation is to listen without interrupting, allowing the other person to fully express their ideas before responding. These strategic silences not only show respect but also allow the other person to organize their thoughts and elaborate on their message. In sensitive conversations, such as those involving strong emotions, these moments of silence can be even more powerful than any words, because they demonstrate patience and a genuine willingness to understand. A useful technique for maintaining fluid conversations is reframing, which involves repeating in your own words what the other person said, confirming that you understood correctly. For example, if someone says, "I feel like my efforts aren't valued at work," you can respond, "So you feel like your work isn't being recognized as it should be. Is that correct?" This not only prevents misunderstandings but also makes the other person feel heard and validated, strengthening the emotional connection. Finally, deep conversations and trust depend not only on what you do during the interaction, but also on what happens afterward. A simple follow-up message, such as, "Thanks for sharing that with me, I really appreciate it," or a small gesture like remembering an important detail mentioned during the conversation and returning to it another time, can solidify the perception that you truly care about the relationship. Over time, these practices build a reputation as someone people enjoy talking to, because they feel every interaction with you has genuine value. Mastering high-level interpersonal communication allows you to go beyond the superficial and turn every interaction into an opportunity to build stronger bonds, whether with colleagues, clients, friends, or family. It's not about using perfect phrases or impressing with knowledge, but rather demonstrating humanity, caring, and a sincere desire to understand others. By consistently practicing these skills, you will become a person who not only communicates information but also creates experiences of connection and trust that leave a lasting impression on others. Chapter number 13. Persuasive Speaking for Sales and Negotiation. Persuasive public speaking applied to sales and negotiation is one of the most valuable skills anyone can develop, regardless of their profession. In a world where ideas, products, and services are constantly competing, the ability to present arguments convincingly can make the difference between a yes and a no. Selling isn't just about offering a product, it's about connecting with the other person's needs, desires, and emotions. Negotiation, on the other hand, goes beyond imposing conditions. It's a process of finding points of agreement that benefit both parties, maintaining positive long-term relationships. To master this area, it's essential to learn how to adapt your speech, apply influence techniques, and use language strategically to close deals without generating resistance. Tailoring your pitch to sell an idea or product requires first understanding who you're speaking to. Every potential client, investor, or partner has a unique perspective, a specific set of concerns, and a distinct motivation that drives them to make decisions. Therefore, before attempting to persuade, you should analyze your audience's profile. Ask yourself, what problem do they want to solve? What value are they seeking in what you offer? What emotional or rational factors most influence their decision-making? With this information, you can adjust your message to highlight the aspects that are truly relevant to that person. For example, when presenting business software, a CFO will likely focus on cost reduction and return on investment, while an operations manager may be more interested in ease of use and the efficiency it will generate for their team. An effective technique for tailoring your pitch is the feature-benefit method. Many people make the mistake of focusing their pitch on the product's technical features, but what truly resonates with the audience are the concrete benefits those features generate. For example, it's not enough to say, "This phone has a 5,000 milliamp hours battery." It's more persuasive to say, "This phone can last you all day without needing to recharge, even if you work from early morning until late at night." This shift in focus puts the customer at the center of attention and shows how your proposal directly impacts their lives. In the context of negotiation, persuasive public speaking relies on influence techniques that seek to create a collaborative, non-confrontational environment. One of these is the win-win principle, which consists of seeking agreements where both parties feel they have obtained a benefit. For example, if you are negotiating a service contract, instead of solely pushing for a higher price, you can offer additional terms that increase the customer's perceived value, such as extended support or free training for their team. Another key element is preparation. Anticipating potential objections and having responses ready demonstrates confidence and builds trust. If you know that price is a sensitive issue, you can prepare arguments based on the total cost of ownership, long-term savings, or the exclusivity of your product. Language skills are essential for closing deals. The words you choose can generate openness or resistance in your interlocutor. For example, instead of saying, "You must make this decision today," which can sound like an imposition, it's better to use inviting and beneficial language, such as, "If we implement this today, you'll be able to start seeing immediate results and get ahead of the competition." It's also advisable to use positive affirmations and avoid terms that can generate doubt. Instead of saying, "Don't worry, there won't be any problems," it's better to say, "Rest assured, our team will be available to ensure a successful implementation." Words convey not only information but also emotions. Therefore, careful tone, structure, and pauses can make all the difference. A key element of persuasive public speaking in sales and negotiation is the use of storytelling. Telling relevant stories that illustrate the value of your proposition. A story from a client who faced a similar problem and was able to solve it thanks to your product or service can be more persuasive than any cold data. For example, a few months ago, a company in your industry was facing the same challenge of high maintenance costs. They implemented our solution and, in 6 weeks, managed to reduce their expenses by 20% while increasing their productivity. Today, they tell us their employees work with less stress because their processes are more efficient. This type of story allows your interlocutor to identify with you and visualize the benefit in a concrete way. Active listening also plays a fundamental role in persuasion during sales and negotiations. Many people focus on speaking and presenting their arguments, but forget to listen. When you pay attention to the other person's concerns, objections, and needs, you can respond in a more precise and personalized way. For example, if a client says, "I'm concerned about the time it will take to train your staff," you can respond, "I understand that concern. In fact, that's why we include a 3-day training program that ensures your entire team is up and running quickly." Listening and responding specifically builds a bond of trust that makes it easier to close the deal. Body language is also part of the equation. An upright posture, firm but friendly eye contact, and hand movements that complement your message convey confidence and credibility. Conversely, a slouched posture, avoiding eye contact, or nervous gestures can give an impression of insecurity that undermines your argument. Therefore, rehearsing not only what you're going to say, but also how you're going to say it, is essential to achieving a real impact. In the final closing phase, it's helpful to apply progressive commitment techniques, which involve reaching small agreements that lead to the final agreement. For example, you can confirm, "Do you agree that our solution solves the lead time problem? Then, would you be happy if we worked on an implementation timeline?" These steps generate a chain of "yes" that makes the final commitment more natural. Additionally, asking closing questions, such as, "Would you prefer we start on Monday or Wednesday?" steers the conversation toward action, avoiding lingering indecision. Persuasive public speaking for sales and negotiation isn't a rigid technique, but rather a combination of adaptive skills. Knowing how to analyze your interlocutor, clearly communicate benefits, precise language skills, use emotionally compelling stories, and active listening to build trust. When these skills are practiced consistently, the process of selling an idea or closing a deal ceases to be a stressful moment and becomes an opportunity to build lasting and mutually beneficial relationships. Ultimately, the goal isn't just to achieve an immediate transaction, but to establish the foundation for a trusting relationship that will lead to new opportunities in the future. Chapter number 14. Preparation and continuous practice. Preparation and ongoing practice are the foundation of all great public speaking skills. Many people believe that speaking fluently in front of an audience, whether small or large, is a natural talent. However, the reality is that fluency, charisma, and confidence are the result of consistent and well-structured training. An inspiring and persuasive speaker doesn't emerge from complete improvisation, but from a daily discipline of improvement that turns every experience, every mistake, and every opportunity to speak into a valuable lesson. Understanding that practice isn't something you do occasionally, but rather must be part of a planned routine, is the first step toward achieving an exceptional level of communication. Establishing daily improvement routines is essential because it helps consolidate learning and turn skills into automatic habits. An example of a simple but effective routine is to dedicate at least 10 or 15 minutes each day to vocalization and breathing exercises, which strengthen voice control and clarity when speaking. These exercises can include reading a text aloud, exaggerating the pronunciation of each word, practicing vocal scales like singers do, or working with deep breathing to increase lung capacity and vocal endurance. Another daily habit is reading different types of texts aloud, news, book excerpts, historical speeches, with the goal of training diction and intonation, varying the tone according to the type of message. Over time, this practice develops a more flexible and persuasive voice, which translates into a positive impact during any intervention. An essential complement to these routines is the habit of thinking in terms of structure. Spending a few minutes a day organizing quick thoughts on any topic, for example, how to improve productivity at work, or the importance of empathy in relationships, trains your mind to think in an organized way, even under pressure. A practical way to do this is to apply the rule of 3, defining a beginning, presenting the topic, a middle, giving 2 or 3 main points, and a brief conclusion, summary with a call to action. Practicing these microstructures every day allows you, over time, to respond in a more organized and natural way when unexpected questions or moments of improvisation arise. Recording and analyzing yourself is another pillar of growth in public speaking. Many people avoid this step because confronting their own image or voice can be uncomfortable at first. However, self-diagnosis is one of the most powerful tools for detecting areas for improvement. By recording yourself while giving a presentation, you can observe aspects that go unnoticed during the presentation. Do you maintain eye contact? Do your hands convey confidence or nervousness? Does your tone of voice reflect confidence or sound monotonous? These details, which can make the difference between an impactful speech and one that goes unnoticed, are clearly identified when observed from the audience's perspective. The analysis shouldn't limit itself to noting errors, but rather to creating an improvement plan. For example, if you notice yourself repeating filler words like or You can focus the following week on consciously eliminating them by practicing strategic pauses instead of filling them with unnecessary words. A useful recommendation is to record yourself in a variety of contexts, from formal speeches to impromptu presentations, to everyday conversations where you spontaneously explain a topic. Analyzing these different scenarios gives you a complete picture of how you communicate in various circumstances, which better prepares you for real-world challenges. You can even ask trusted people or colleagues for feedback by sharing your recordings and soliciting specific opinions on aspects such as clarity, timing, expressiveness, or persuasiveness. This external feedback provides a perspective that is sometimes not perceived on your own. Turning every experience into a workout involves adopting a constant learning mindset. Every conversation, every work meeting, every spontaneous comment in front of a group can be viewed as an opportunity for deliberate practice. For example, if you're participating in a short meeting, you can set a goal for yourself, using a firm and confident tone of voice when presenting a point, or making sure you summarize a complex idea clearly in less than a minute. If you have to give an impromptu explanation to a coworker, you can use it to practice the quick mental framework of beginning, developing, and closing. These small goals, applied daily and accumulated over time, produce noticeable improvements without having to wait for major events to train. Furthermore, it's important to develop a positive attitude toward mistakes. Many people feel embarrassed after making a mistake or when a presentation doesn't go as expected, and this leads them to avoid new opportunities to speak. But every mistake holds valuable information. If you were stuck during a presentation, you can analyze what caused the block: lack of preparation, nerves, information overload, and use that experience to design preventive strategies. You may find that memorizing everything word for word doesn't work for you and that, instead, carrying a guide with key points gives you more confidence. Instead of viewing mistakes as failures, turn them into direct feedback on your improvement process. Continuous practice also benefits from vicarious learning, observing and analyzing other great communicators. Watching famous speeches, TED Talks, debates, or even high-profile corporate presentations gives you concrete examples of effective techniques. Ask yourself what makes that speaker capture your attention. Is it their tone of voice? Their body language? Their strategic pauses? Then, take those observations and apply them to your style, adapting them to your personality. This doesn't mean imitating, but rather taking inspiration to expand your repertoire of communicative resources. Finally, keeping track of your progress can be highly motivating. Keeping a journal where you note what practices you did each day, what you improved, and what challenges you faced allows you to visualize your progress over time. This reinforces the habit of consistency and reminds you that growth in public speaking isn't a one-time event, but a cumulative process. Preparation and ongoing practice aren't just tasks for those who want to become great speakers, but a way of life for anyone who wants to improve their daily interactions and achieve new professional and personal opportunities. Every minute spent improving your communication has a significant return: greater confidence, greater clarity, and a growing ability to inspire, convince, and positively influence others. The key is to commit to the process, maintain discipline, and never stop looking for ways to perfect your voice, your body language, and your ability to connect with others. Over time, consistent practice transforms public speaking from a dreaded challenge to a natural and powerful skill you can use in any setting in your life. Chapter number 15: Common Mistakes That Ruin a Speech. One of the biggest obstacles faced by many speakers, even experienced ones, is the common mistakes that can ruin a speech. No matter how good your ideas are or how innovative your message is, if your presentation is riddled with bad habits, constant filler words, or mistakes you can't correct on the fly, your audience's perception will suffer. Effective communication isn't just about what you say, but how you deliver it, and this how hides many errors that, if left uncorrected, can undermine your credibility and diminish the impact of your words. One of the most common bad habits is speaking too quickly. This usually occurs due to nervousness or trying to cover too much information in a short amount of time. The result is that the audience has difficulty following the message, feels overwhelmed, and, in some cases, loses interest. The solution lies in practicing strategic pauses and learning to control your pace. A useful technique is to record yourself speaking to identify if your speed is appropriate and consciously work on reducing it, using your breathing as a guide. When you breathe deeply and in a controlled manner, your speed regulates itself naturally. Another detrimental habit is a lack of eye contact. Some speakers constantly look at their notes, their presentation screen, or the floor, avoiding the gaze of their audience. This can convey insecurity, disinterest, or even dishonesty. Eye contact, on the other hand, builds connection and trust. A practical trick is to mentally divide the audience into sections and alternate your gaze between them, so that each person feels you are speaking directly to them without your gaze seeming fixed or intimidating. It's also common to overuse verbal fillers such as, I mean, do you understand me? I guess. These expressions, used once or twice, don't have much impact, but when repeated constantly, they undermine the speech's authority and credibility. The audience may begin to focus more on telling your fillers than on listening to the content of the message. To correct them, you must first be aware of them, and the best way to do this is by recording your speech and listening carefully. Once identified, the technique is to replace them with silent pauses. Instead of filling the silence with a filler, breathe and pause. These pauses, in addition to eliminating the filler, give you an air of confidence and control. Another common mistake is the overuse of technical terms or overly complex language. Many speakers believe that using sophisticated words or professional jargon makes them sound smarter, when in reality, it can actually disconnect their audience. An effective speech should be clear and understandable to everyone. Even if you're speaking to experts, clarity never hurts. A good practice is to review your speech with the mindset of an average listener. Would it be understandable without prior knowledge? If not, look for simpler synonyms or everyday examples that will make it easier to understand. Body posture is another aspect that can ruin a speech if not handled well. A speaker slouching, with arms crossed, or constantly fidgeting, projects insecurity or disinterest. On the contrary, an upright, open posture with hand movements that accompany the message generates an image of confidence and dominance. It's important to practice in front of a mirror or record yourself on video, observing which gestures convey confidence and which distract or create a misleading impression. Time management is also a critical factor. Going over the allotted time can make your audience uncomfortable and give the impression of being unprepared, while finishing too quickly can appear disinterested or lacking in content. The key is to rehearse with a stopwatch and have a clear structure: introduction, middle, and conclusion, with allotted times for each part. This doesn't mean memorizing word for word, but rather being clear about the flow of ideas and adjusting on the fly if you notice yourself going on too long. Another common mistake is ignoring the audience's nonverbal feedback. Speakers are often so focused on their own speech that they fail to notice clear signs of boredom, confusion, or discomfort among the audience. If you notice the audience losing attention, don't hesitate to adjust your tone, change the pace, or interact with a brief question to regain their interest. A flexible speaker, able to adapt to what's happening in real time, demonstrates mastery and confidence. Finally, a critical mistake is panicking when an unexpected glitch occurs, such as forgetting a part of your speech, the projector disconnecting, or someone asking a challenging question. These moments can destabilize anyone, but what really matters isn't the mistake itself, but how you handle it. The best strategy is to stay calm, acknowledge the error if necessary, and continue naturally. For example, if you forget a part of your speech, you can calmly say, "Let me go back a moment. I want to highlight an important point I missed," and continue with your presentation. This type of handling demonstrates maturity and control, turning a potential failure into an opportunity to demonstrate professionalism. Correcting mistakes on the fly requires practice and self-confidence. There is no such thing as a perfect speaker who never makes mistakes. What distinguishes great communicators is their ability to learn from their mistakes, adjust their style, and grow with each experience. Adopting this mindset will allow you to continually improve and become a more confident, persuasive, and authentic speaker. Ultimately, avoiding these common mistakes isn't about chasing rigid perfection, but rather about refining your communication so that your message arrives with clarity, power, and credibility, leaving a lasting impression on your audience. Chapter number 16. Speaking with Authenticity and Charisma. Speaking with authenticity and charisma is one of the most powerful skills anyone aspiring to become a high-impact communicator can develop. Often, when we think of great speakers, we recall their ability to move, inspire, or convince, but what truly makes the difference between an ordinary speech and an unforgettable one is the authenticity they convey and the natural charisma with which they connect with their audience. Authenticity builds trust because people perceive when someone is genuine, when they speak from experience, from a personal truth, and not from an empty script or a mask. Charisma, on the other hand, is not a magical attribute that only some are born with, but a combination of attitudes, body language, tone of voice, and emotional connection that can be cultivated with practice and awareness. Being genuine when communicating means speaking from what you truly believe, think, and feel. Audiences, although diverse, share one common trait. They're adept at detecting incongruity. If you say something you don't believe or use words you don't feel are your own, your body language and tone of voice betray it. Therefore, a fundamental step toward authenticity is to reflect before speaking. What message do I want to convey, and why is it important to me? What personal experiences support my words? When you speak from your values, your convictions, or your real experiences, your message acquires an emotional weight that resonates with people much more deeply than any rote technique. Developing your own voice is another key aspect. Many people, when starting out in public speaking, tend to imitate other speakers they admire, adopting their mannerisms, tone, and even their delivery. While it's valid to be inspired by great communicators, mimicking their style can have the opposite effect, sounding forced or unnatural. Your goal should be to identify which communication elements work best for you. For example, some people have a more energetic and passionate style, while others are naturally calm and thoughtful, but just as effective. A useful practice is to record yourself speaking about a topic you're passionate about and then analyze your tone, timing, and body language, identifying which parts feel more natural and which seem stilted. Over time, you'll discover a style that feels authentic, comfortable, and effective for you. Charisma is built through small details that, together, generate a magnetic presence. One of these is the energy with which you speak. The passion you convey through your voice, gestures, and body language engages your audience emotionally. It's not about shouting or exaggerated movements, but rather letting your natural enthusiasm shine through. Another key element of charisma is the ability to show vulnerability in a controlled manner. Many people believe that a good speaker must be perfect and show no weaknesses, but the reality is that sharing a personal anecdote, a past mistake, or a moment of human doubt can generate a much stronger connection than a flawless but cold speech. Genuine vulnerability, when shared with a positive purpose, conveys closeness and humanity. Connecting with authenticity also involves listening and adapting to your audience. It's not about reciting a fixed script regardless of who's listening, but rather paying attention to your audience's reactions and adjusting your tone or energy accordingly. If you notice the audience is serious or thoughtful, you can delve deeper into the emotional aspects of your message. If, on the other hand, they're enthusiastic or engaged, you can increase your dynamism and make them part of the experience with questions or brief dynamics. Emotional connection is a two-way process, where the speaker not only speaks, but also feels and responds to what's happening in the environment. An often overlooked aspect when talking about authenticity is the consistency between your words and your actions. Credibility is built not only by what you say on stage, but also by what you do off it. If you talk about leadership but don't exemplify responsibility and empathy in your daily life, your message loses its power. Therefore, cultivating a lifestyle consistent with the values you communicate reinforces the perception of authenticity. When people see that your words reflect your actions, your influence grows exponentially. It's also important to pay attention to your body language to convey authenticity. An authentic speaker maintains an open posture, uses gestures consistent with their message, and projects confidence without rigidity. For example, a genuine smile at the right moment can convey a sense of closeness, while a hand gesture accompanying a key point reinforces the clarity of the idea. Conversely, forced or mechanically rehearsed gestures can be perceived as artificial and diminish their impact. Practicing in front of a mirror or with recordings allows you to refine these aspects, ensuring that your body reinforces what your voice says. Tone of voice is another key element. Speaking authentically means using a natural tone, avoiding exaggerations that sound fake or a low volume that denotes insecurity. The goal is to find a balance, a firm tone that inspires confidence, but at the same time flexible enough to adapt to different moments in your speech. For example, you can use a warmer, softer tone when sharing a personal story and a firmer tone when giving a recommendation or a call to action. This natural modulation helps maintain your audience's interest and reinforces the genuine nature of your message. Finally, charisma and authenticity are enhanced when the speaker conveys a clear and positive intention. Not just talking for the sake of talking, but speaking with purpose. People connect with those who feel they are seeking to add value, inspire, solve a problem, or motivate change. Before each presentation, ask yourself, what do I want them to feel, think, or do after listening to me. This audience-oriented approach will allow you to communicate with clarity and empathy, two essential qualities of a great speaker. Speaking with authenticity and charisma isn't a trick or a mask you only put on stage, but rather the result of a process of self-knowledge, consistency, and constant practice. When you manage to express yourself genuinely, with your own style and the ability to connect emotionally with others, your words cease to be mere sounds and become memorable experiences that inspire, motivate, and transform. Conclusion: your transformation as a speaker and communicator. Mastering public speaking and the ability to think quickly while speaking is much more than learning how to deliver a well-structured speech or memorizing breathing and body control techniques. It's a personal transformation that impacts every aspect of your life, from how you communicate with family and friends to how you handle job interviews, professional presentations, or crucial negotiation moments. Throughout this process, it becomes clear that communication is not just a tool for conveying information, but a bridge to building trust, inspiring others, and opening up opportunities that might otherwise go unnoticed. This transformation is achieved through constant practice and the conscious decision to improve a little each day, to not settle for speaking as usual, and to seek, in every interaction, the opportunity to grow and leave a positive impression. One of the key principles you'll probably notice is that clarity is more important than the number of words. Many people believe that a good speaker is someone who talks a lot or uses complex words, when in reality, a great communicator is someone who manages to convey ideas in a direct, organized, and understandable way. This involves structuring each intervention with a start that captures attention, a development that delivers real value, and a close that leaves a memorable message. Another fundamental principle is authenticity. It's not about seeming like someone you're not, but rather about leveraging the best of your personal style and communicating from your own experiences, values, and beliefs. Audiences connect more with a speaker who displays humanity, emotion, and vulnerability than with someone who appears perfect but distant. Continuous practice, as we've seen, is the true engine of this transformation. Public speaking, managing a meeting, or reacting quickly to unexpected questions are skills that are only consolidated through repetition and analysis of experience. Recording your interventions, receiving feedback from trusted people, and turning every everyday interaction into a training opportunity are strategies that, accumulated over time, make a noticeable difference. Great communicators didn't become experts in a day. They were forged through daily discipline, a willingness to make mistakes, and the ability to learn from each one. If you adopt this mindset of constant improvement, you'll find that your speaking confidence will grow naturally, without forcing gestures or memorizing scripts word for word. It's also important to remember that public speaking isn't limited to the stage. The skills you've explored along the way, from controlling your nerves to persuasion, from active listening to the ability to improvise clearly, are applicable to all areas of your life. A job interview, a conversation with a difficult client, a presentation in a professional setting, a chat with a friend in need of support. Each of these situations is an opportunity to apply what you've learned and boost your confidence. Effective communication isn't just a means to achieving external goals. It also strengthens your self-esteem, helps you build stronger relationships, and gives you the ability to positively influence the world around you. The final message is simple, yet powerful. Your voice matters. Your ideas, your experiences, and your perspectives have the potential to inspire, motivate, and transform other people's lives. Never underestimate the impact you can make when you express yourself with clarity, authenticity, and charisma. Every time you speak, whether in front of a crowd or in a one-on-one conversation, you have the opportunity to make a difference. Take advantage of every moment to practice, correct, improve, and, above all, enjoy the process of communicating. Speaking well is not a talent reserved for a select few. It's a learned skill that anyone can develop with dedication, patience, and practice. Today, you have in your hands not only tools, but also a different vision of what it means to communicate. The transformation doesn't end when you close this chapter. In fact, it's just beginning. It's up to you to continue cultivating these skills, experimenting, making mistakes, and trying again until speaking confidently and thinking quickly becomes second nature. Every step you take will bring you closer to becoming not only a better speaker, but a better communicator, capable of connecting with others, opening doors, and leaving a positive mark on every person you interact with. That is the true reward of this journey. Discovering that your voice, used with purpose and authenticity, can change your life and the lives of those who listen to you. So, if this audiobook inspired you and you're ready to continue delving deeper into your personal growth and inner transformation, I invite you to discover another eye-opening audiobook that will change the way you see the world, your decisions, and your potential. Click here, and I'll see you there.